Thank you, Ceann Corley. The Censorship of Publications Board is an outdated relic from a different era. It has lingered on while time has passed it by. The board has been bereft of members since 2011 and has had only one book referred to it over the past 5 years, namely Minister Shatter's Laura. It strikes a lonely figure amongst the government's approach of cronyism to board appointments. Perversely, the board now gives added publicity to books being referred to it, while in practice it is essentially bypassed by the internet. It is a quango that has long since passed its sell-by date. The majority of people have never heard of the board, though it was long since departed before Minister Shatter's novel made the front pages. Now it's time to ensure they never have to hear from it again. In an age of easy access to mass information, the idea that banning books in an entire country was either genuinely possible or socially necessary seems quaint. For most people across Ireland, publications are available at a simple click of a mouse. The advent of the IT revolution, the arrival of commercial giants like Amazon and Google have brought a wealth of publications to countless households. While it was once said that all the knowledge in the world was housed in the Library of Alexandria, it is now contained in Google. E-books cover innumerable spheres of interest, broadening the cultural wealth of the country, but also plumbing to the depths of bad taste. After all, even 50 Shades of Grey sold almost 60,000 copies in less than 2 months after its release here. This technological revolution occurred hand in hand with a dramatic shift in cultural and social values. The diverse religious views of the population, relaxation of old social morality, and diversity of different nationalities in Ireland is a far cry from the post-war country where the censorship board was set up. In that immeasurable, more traditional country, a different sense of values and the role of the state in enforcing those values prevailed. Over the decades, that shared sense of what was and was not acceptable has been transformed. Economic growth, democratic shifts, immigration, globalisation have all combined to change how we look at things. The past is a foreign country. Lagging behind this immense shift in Irish society is the ageing monolith of the Censorship of Publications Board, a bygone reminder of a bygone time. It reflects a vague set of values of what is permissible without any reflection of the reality of how people access information in their own individual rights. Its continued existence is now having the direct opposite effect that its creators had hoped for. Referring a book to the board has the counterproductive impact of widely publicising a book which is essentially available through other routes. After it was referred to the board, Laura was republished with high demand. The story of censorship in Ireland jars with our proud sense of a great literary tradition on this island. Outside commentators have long since criticised what they saw as a draconian regime. The British poet Robert Graves referred to our board as, and I quote, "the fiercest literary censorship this side of the Iron Curtain," unquote. Our own writers have wilted under the harsh glare of the literary fireman. The late John McGahern reflected his own amusement at the idea of the board before finding that it still had a chilling effect on his life, as he lost his job as a school teacher under the orders of an irate bishop when his books were banned. Writing in his memoir, he stated that, quote, "we had looked on the censorship board as a joke. Most banned books, like most books published, weren't worth reading, and those that were could easily be found." However, upon finding his own works banned, he said, quote, "he found it childish and unpleasant, and I was a little ashamed that our own independent country was making a fool of itself yet again." He went on to say, "I refused to take part in any protest on the grounds that it would do the whole sorry business too much honour." End quotation. A significant amount of books have been banned on the vague basis of obscenity by the board since its creation in 1946, when it replaced the 1929 Censorship Act. Currently, there are 274 books and magazines banned in Ireland. Separate from this is the scourge of child pornography, which in the 1998 Child Trafficking and Pornography Act covers. That Act makes it an offence to possess, print, publish or show child pornography. Current banned publications include amazing detective stories and daring romances. Deemed obscene in the 1950s, they would not even merit a raised eyebrow on Fair City now. Upon receipt of a complaint, a member of the public, the board has the power to prohibit the sale and distribution of a particular publication. This means that it is illegal for this book to be bought, sold or distributed around the country. Books that are prohibited may be appealed to the Censorship of Publications Appeals Board. Both the Censorship of Publications Board and the Appeals Board consist of 5 members each. While the Minister has indicated that he will appoint a temporary board to deal with Minister Shatter's Laura, both boards have been empty for years. The internal process behind banning is done behind firmly closed doors. For a book to be prohibited, at least 3 members must agree with the decision and only 1 can dissent. If the prohibition is passed, it comes into effect as soon as it is announced in Irish Ifigul. The ban lasts for 12 years. No details are given or minutes published on the discussion over the merits of any of the publication. The reasons behind the decision are not uttered in public. There is no open conversation as to why certain books should be banned and others allowed. No national discussion on what our collective values are. Instead, it is all done in the shadows. The entire process is intransparent. The appeal process is equally opaque and out of date. An appeal against the prohibition of a book may be made by the author, editor or publisher of the book, or, wait for it, by any 5 members of the Oireachtas, either the Dáil or Seanad, who take an interest or an initiative to act together.
Manifestos should be banned.
You could even... Correct, Minister Rabbitte. I'm just about to say you could even have the Reform Alliance banding together to either work for or against Minister Shatter's book, depending on, of course, the decision in the first instance. And that would be quite interesting, I'm sure. The Appeal Board may affirm the order, revoke the order, or vary the order so as to exclude a particular edition of the book from the order. Ordinary citizens are not allowed to appeal a ban. Again, the decision-making process is not one that allows for meaningful debate and discussion. The Gardaí may be issued with a search warrant if they suspect that prohibited books or periodicals are being kept anywhere for sale or distribution. If they find prohibited publications, they may remove them. Or if they are convicted of possessing prohibited publications, you may be liable to a fine of €63.49 or 6 months imprisonment. This type of law is out of place in modern Ireland. The idea of spending prison time for selling books which are easily available elsewhere, even if never enforced, does not belong in a modern democratic society. The board stands out like a sore thumb in the government's much publicised pledge to cull quangos. Prior to the 2011 election, Fine Gael's Reinventing Government document promised the abolition of over 145 state bodies and companies, including the HSE and FÁS. It was also the cornerstone of their general election campaign on cutting waste in the public service. In reality, Fine Gael has completely abandoned its pre-election and election commitments to abolish 145 quangos. Only 49 will be abolished in total under this government. According to the Public Service Reform Plan published in November 2011, 48 state agencies to be rationalised by the end of 2012 and 46 to be reviewed by the end of June 2012. Earlier this month, Minister Howlin reheated the old news about a €20 million saving which he had previously spoken about in 2012 and outline the slow progress made on the actual number of agencies involved. This list of agencies was simply a rehash of agencies we have already rationalised or were in the process of rationalising. The government has attempted to mask its failure to radically overhaul the Quango section by obfuscating on the details. In reality, it has to date reduced the overall number of Quangos by 25 agencies in total. The government has rolled back on its specific promise to abolish the National Cancer Registry and merge the Irish Aviation Authority and Commission for Aviation Regulation. If it completes the rationalisations promised since 2012 and further outlined in January 2014, it will abolish a further net amount of 24 Quangos. By its own account, albeit hidden behind the spin, the government will complete the abolition of just 49 Quangos. And this is a far cry from the 149 promised in the photo opportunities of 2010. However, it can improve its numbers by adding the Censorship Board and the Appeals Board to its paltry effort. The proud literary heritage of this island has been often overshadowed by the dark cloud of censorship. The rich works of renowned authors have fallen foul of the Censorship Board's watchful eye. The chill winds of prohibition blew through libraries and bookshops across the state and cooled the enthusiasms of writers on the island. Many years have passed on since the Censorship Board has had its day. Irish society has been transformed while technology has pushed back our cultural horizons to fresh frontiers. Now is the time to move on from an obsolete relic whose effectiveness is counterproductive and purpose questionable. I am confident that the Minister will live up to his party's promise to cull Quangos and put the board out of its misery. Thank you.
Anybody wishing to oh, sorry, Minister, my apologies.
Concordia. Thank you, Concordia. Concordia, I'm deputising. Thank you very much, sir. I'm deputising for my colleague, Minister Dean Henn, who I think has communicated to the proposer of the bill why he can't be here. Concordia, censorship of publications in Ireland has had a very sad and sorry history, as Deputy Collins has just adduced. Many great works of literature, including many by internationally successful and talented authors, both Irish and international, were banned. There is no question of returning to that time when a powerful censorship board could determine what members of the public could and could not read. Deputy Collins's bill proposes to repeal the Censorship of Publications Board and the Censorship of Publications Appeals Board. To me, this appears to be a sensible and overdue reform, but achieving this objective is somewhat more complex than is envisaged in Deputy Collins's bill. There are two core issues to address. The first is that a complaint has been made under the current legislation, and it's only fair that we allow that complaint to be dealt with. The second is that this is a complex and technical area, and repealing part of the Censorship of Publications Acts while leaving the remainder in place should not be done without giving due consideration to the effects which this would have on the entire body of legislation. The last publication to be banned by boards under this legislation was in 2003. The approach of this government is to examine all of the issues and the alternatives, and then make a well-informed decision on the best way forward. And the approach of this government is to also give the complainant access to a Censorship of Publications Board which is provided for in legislation, and under which legislation they have made a complaint, and that is only fair. The government therefore will not rush to take action without examining all of the implications of that action. The government will adopt a course after examining all of the issues that arise, and for this reason will formally oppose Deputy Collins's bill today. The Censorship of Publications Acts of 1929-1967 comprises a total of 3 acts. Under the acts, publications which are censored are published in Irish effigial and entered into a register of prohibited publications which is provided for in the acts. These registers are available on the websites of both the Department of Justice and Equality and the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. The role of the Censorship of Publications Board is to examine books and periodicals for sale. The boards may prohibit the sale and distribution of books and periodicals if they're found to be indecent or obscene, or advocate the procurement of abortion or miscarriage or the use of any method, treatment or appliance for the purpose of such procurement. In addition, an officer of Customs and Excise may detain on importation, for the purpose of referring it to the Censorship of Publications Board, any book which, in his or her opinion, ought to be examined under the Act. The Board must examine every book referred to it by an officer of Customs and Excise, and every book in respect of which a complaint is made to it in the prescribed manner by any other person, and may examine any book on its own initiative. The Censorship of Publications Board meets only when it is required. It last met on the 3rd of June 2008. The term of office of the last Censorship of Publications Board expired on the 9th of November 2011. One complaint has been received for consideration by the Censorship of Publications Board. The term of office of the Censorship of Publications Board is 5 years. The chairperson and members of the board are appointed by the Minister for Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. The Censorship of Publications Board is independent of the Minister in the exercise of its functions, and as Minister for Culture and Heritage, he does not have any power to alter these decisions. The Act specifies that the board shall have 5 members, including the chairperson. The 5-year term of office of the board is reckoned from the expiration of the term of office of its predecessor. As stated, the term of office of the last board expired on the 9th of November 2011, and therefore the term of a new board would run to 9 November 2016. The Censorship of Publications Appeals Board may on appeal affirm or revoke a prohibition order in respect of a book or periodical publication, or may vary the order so as to exclude from the application thereof any particular edition of the prohibited book or periodical publication. The Appeals Board has 5 members. The chair must be a judge of the Supreme Court, High Court or Circuit Court, or a practicing barrister or a practicing solicitor of not less than 7 years standing. The term of office of the Censorship of Publications Appeals Board is for 3 years. The board meets as required, and it last met on the 21st November 2011. Like the Censorship of Publications Board, its term of office is reckonable from the expiry of the previous board. The term of office of the last iteration of the Appeals Board expired on the 11th of February 2012, so a newly appointed board would serve until 11 February 2015. In the case of both boards, board members are not paid, but they are recompensed for expenses incurred in respect of attendance at board meetings. Significant legislative change has taken place since these boards were put in place, and technological advancement, as Deputy Collins has said, has altered the way in which information is shared, accessed and disseminated. One of the legislative changes is the Child Trafficking and Pornography Acts of 1998 and 2004. Under this legislation, distribution of child pornography by film, video or material in written or auditory form, including material produced or transmitted via the internet, is illegal. It might be worth mentioning here that while there are many different approaches to censorship internationally, child pornography is the only subject which is censored in virtually every country in the world. Another legislative change in the area of censorship is the Prohibition of Incitement to Hatred Act 1989. This legislation makes it an offence, inter alia, to publish or distribute written material, to show or play a recording if the written material or recording are threatening, abusive or insulting and are intended or are likely to stir up hatred. May I now turn to the internet, Cancoria. The internet was not even dreamt of in 1967, much less so in 1929 or 1946. This, of course, means that legislation which regulates the content of printed books and periodicals as defined under the 1929 and 1946 Acts does not prohibit the same content on the internet. In Ireland, we do regulate the internet, but we regulate it in a different way to that with which we regulate publications. At present, in Ireland, internet service providers operate under a self-regulatory format. This is based on an industry code of practice and ethics which commits participating ISPs to ensure that their services and promotional material will not contain material that is illegal, misleading, likely to incite violence or cruelty, racial hatred, prejudice, discrimination, or even where the material is not illegal, but it is considered inappropriate or calculated to cause distress, anxiety, or inconvenience to others. This self-regulation is overseen by the Office for Internet Safety, which was established in 2008. It's an executive office of the Department of Justice and Equality. It has primary oversight responsibility in respect of reviewing and ensuring the appropriate operation of the code and the wider self-regulatory system. If self-regulation were not proving effective enough, then the Office of Internet Safety can consider the introduction of legislation to regulate the sector. In fact, the second debate this morning is on social media and a report being brought forward by the Joint Oireachtas Committee in regard to that issue, and it's not disconnected from this issue, Cancolia. So, Cancolia, I thank Deputy Collins for advancing this bill at this time. I think it's timely, and I think it hopefully will provoke a debate in the House that, in my view, is long overdue. Thank you, sir.